So we pretty much already know the ending of Grand Theft Auto 6, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure it out. I mean, just go back one game to the end of Grand Theft Auto 5, and you've got that decision where you really got to choose between Trevor or Michael.
You want a piece of me? You want to kill me?
You go back once more to Grand Theft Auto 4, and Nico is left with the choice basically between his cousin Roman's life or his girlfriend Kate. Not that he really knew it, but there's that bitter sting at the end, no matter who you choose, really. Hopefully in your playthrough, Roman survived. But then you can look over at Red Dead Redemption. The end of Red Dead Redemption 1, John, after going around trying to track down his old friends, the members of his gang, brothers, really his family, in a sense he's betraying them, even though John says he left the gang after the gang left him, but whatever. He has to track them down and get rid of them. And then what happens at the very end of Red Dead Redemption? Well, the government comes in and betrays John. And then you look at Red Dead Redemption 2, and it's a little bit more complex in that game, but the gang crumbles and falls apart, and really it's Micah who betrayed the whole gang and Arthur.
You're not better than me, Morgan. Whatever you say, you fool.
But you even look back into the 3D era of Grand Theft Auto, and there were still those themes of betrayal. As far back as Grand Theft Auto 3, the game starts out with Claude being betrayed by his girlfriend, Catalina. In Vice City, Tommy is betrayed by Sonny. In San Andreas, CJ is betrayed by Big Smoke, but more painfully, by Ryder. So you get it. Grand Theft Auto, or really just Rockstar in general, is no stranger to betrayal in games. Even in Bully, the main antagonist betrays Jimmy Hopkins.
I know you hate me, Jimmy boy. I know you said all that stuff about me behind my back.
What are you talking about?
Don't play innocent with me.
Betrayal is something we see time and time again in Rockstar games. So when you see these two trailers, these beautiful trailers of Jason and Lucia running around Vice City, doing all this crazy stuff together, looking each other in the eyes, dancing around, having a great time together, it's kind of already painful because it looks like they're gonna break our hearts. We know we're gonna fall in love with these characters. We know that we're going to root for them, but we know that ultimately the curtains are gonna have to come down at the end and one of them's gonna have to go, or maybe even both of them. So I'm really curious how they're gonna do this, and I'm making this video to kind of open up a discussion because after reading all of your comments and trying to respond to as many of them as possible, I do make it my goal to respond to every single comment, by the way. I started thinking about how this is going to shake out and how Rockstar could maybe sidestep some of the expectations that I already have in place for the game. For example, the most obvious idea would be, you have to shoot Lucy at the end of Grand Theft Auto 6. Maybe she betrays you or something like that, or maybe as Lucia, you have to shoot Jason. One comment I read shared something pretty interesting. The idea that Jason is an undercover cop. And then I thought, well, based off the trailers, it looks like you start off day in the life with Jason and you go and pick up Lucia from prison. What if during that time, while she's away, Jason becomes an undercover cop or something along those lines? Maybe he flipped. Maybe he becomes a confidential informant. Maybe his relationship with Lucia is very much like Michael and Trevor's, just not as extreme. And of course, somehow narratively, it could be flipped the other way, but then you would be dealing with something pretty dang interesting. You'd have Jason basically the whole time keeping Lucy in the dark while he's working on cracking down whatever criminal empire he's working on, and they do a bunch of robberies and stuff together, and I don't know, I think that would make for a very interesting, weird story, but at the same time, I'm not sure that that's quite how it's gonna go. But what if this game has a rare ending for Rockstar, a happy ending, where both of them end up together and live happily ever after? I don't really see that happening. But there's also another idea that would sting, less than betrayal, but would still break our hearts. What if they go out together? Well, how do you play the game after they're gone? Did they have a son or a daughter we don't know about, and we're gonna be running around as basically Jack Marston at the end of the game? No, I think one of them is going to have to live and one of them is going to have to die. The question is, how? We know that the police are going to have some sort of presence in the story of this game, just based off of what we've seen in the trailers. They're in the cutscenes. We see police raids, so it's not like our leads are just talking to police in a headquarters or something. So because we're seeing the police through these perspectives in this cutscene format, we know that it could be a couple of things. Either there's a third protagonist we don't know about who is possibly an undercover cop or something like that, or maybe this is going to be kind of weird and take us away from the main cast and have cutscenes independent of them. I really hope that's not the case. I think that would break the immersion a lot. In Rockstar games, you typically are always focused around the characters that you're playing and seeing the world through their perspective, getting the information as they get it. It would kind of cheapen the game or ruin it, I think, a little bit to know something that maybe Lucy or Jason doesn't know because we're going to be in their shoes. What if both of them, Lucia and Jason, work together as undercover police officers or something like that? I think it is an interesting thing to think about. Are Lucia and Jason going to drive off a cliff together at the very end, go out in a blaze of glory? Are they going to be able to make it out together? Well, we know with like 99% accuracy that there's probably going to be multiple endings. So I could see one where they both go out together in a hail of bullets or choosing to take their own lives rather than deal with the cops. I could also see another ending to where one has to betray the other, and then maybe there's a happy ending where they can get away and live happily ever after. And in thinking about all of this, I remembered something about the first Red Dead Redemption. I remember the first time I beat the game, and John walks out of the barn, and I tried to take as many of the soldiers down as possible. And I thought I was doing something wrong. I thought if I kept playing it over and over and over again, John Marston could eventually survive the encounter and live happily ever after. Unfortunately, we know that's not the case. No matter what you do, he's gone. And I remember that stung and hurt so bad. Because this whole game, I was rooting for this guy. I wanted him to succeed, to get his family back. And for a little bit, you do, and you get to know them. And, you might even think that you've beaten the game because you're like, well, I did everything I'm supposed to do. Some people have said they even thought that and didn't even know how the game ended back in 2010. I remember that. But unfortunately, you play through the story missions and it doesn't take long for it to go the way it does. So all that to say, it broke my freaking heart. And I was so upset that John had to go at the end of Red Dead Redemption 1. And the first thing I did as Jack was go to Blackwater and unalive every single person there before discovering that I could then track down Edgar Ross. And the ending there even sucks because it's sweet revenge, but Jack became the very thing that John was trying to prevent him from becoming. And that ending stings even more after you play Red Dead Redemption 2 and go back and play the first one. Red Dead Redemption 2 is incredible. It just makes the first one even better. But what I'm trying to say here is I hated the ending of Red Dead Redemption 1, but it's also one of my favorite endings of all time. And that is the ultimate way to subvert viewers' expectations or a player's expectations. Oh, we hear that all the time. We're going to subvert your expectations, stuff like that. And then you get Game of Thrones Season 8, and it's terrible. And most of the time when you hear people say stuff like that, it's awful. But in the case of Red Dead Redemption, it worked because sometimes the pain you feel at the very end of a game, the pain you feel from a loss, leaves you remembering the times when they were alive. Very much like if you lose someone you love in real life. I mean, when you lose someone, there's nothing else you can do with them. All you have left after that are the memories that you made together. And I think they doubled down on that in Red Dead Redemption 2, because when you play Red Dead Redemption 2, you already know Arthur's not in the first one. You know he's not going to make it. Come on. You know that the game can realistically only end one way, if you've played the first one, that is. So the whole game, I knew Arthur was eventually going to be gone. But the game still managed to break my freaking heart because I loved Arthur. He is one of the greatest video game protagonists of all time, if not the greatest video game protagonist of all time. But how was that pain earned? Well, in Red Dead Redemption 2, they earn that pain through the small moments, like fishing with Dutch, or, teaching Jack how to fish, or get fishing out of the equation, just hanging out with your gang, taking Lenny out to drink. Lenny has to go too, unfortunately. But all of those losses in that game hurt because you get to know these characters and do the most mundane stuff with them, and also go through life or death situations with them. So when you lose those characters, and eventually when you lose Arthur, oh my gosh, it hurts. So I'm really hoping that they can do something like that with Grand Theft Auto 6. Just from the trailers alone, it looks like Lucia and Jason are going to have a really good time together and go through all sorts of stuff together. I'm curious how they're going to do it. Is this going to be some weird, twisted, toxic relationship, or are they going to be strong and true to each other in their bond? There's that one part of the trailer where Lucia looks in Jason's eyes and says, "Trust," and he looks back at her and he repeats it. But he does repeat it after a little bit of a delay. And that has me thinking there might be some sort of rift going on, something going on in the back of his mind maybe this entire time. Something he knows that maybe she doesn't. And I think that plays into the whole undercover cop idea. But maybe not. That could also be wild speculation, much like them going to space, but that's another video entirely. But anyways, I'm really curious to see how these two characters are together. Are they going to grow together? Or are they going to be stagnant, kind of like the characters from Grand Theft Auto 5? And look, if you're a Grand Theft Auto 5 fan, that was just a fun, cheap shot. I don't really think that. Yes, there's a hero's journey in all of the games, including Grand Theft Auto 5. But I think I've gotten the discussion going. So I'm really curious to know what you think. How's this game going to end? And you might be saying, dude, why are you making this video? The game is not even out. We don't know if it's going to get delayed again. Look, people have dissected every bit of information they can from the Grand Theft Auto 6 trailers, and this is going to be the biggest video game of all time, the biggest media release of all time, with like a $2 billion budget to make it. I mean, come on. Don't you at least want to speculate a little bit about how the greatest, biggest video game media thing of all time is going to end? I'm curious, because a lot is riding on this game's story. Too much, in fact. And I really hope the story doesn't crumple under the weight of that pressure, the financial obligations that Rockstar may face with such a massive budget to create it, especially after knowing some of the main creatives left before the game even began proper production. So I just think it's something interesting to think about, and I'm sure you have your own thoughts and opinions on maybe how the game's going to end, or maybe you're busy thinking about other things like how you're going to trick out your car or multiple cities, cool stuff like that. But I'm a nerd, I like stories, I love movies, so I'm really curious how this game's going to end. Anyways, share your thoughts down below. My name's Dandy Andy. I make videos about whatever I want, whenever I want. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, all that crap. It would help me a lot. And yeah, I make videos about whatever I want, whenever I want, but lately it's been Grand Theft Auto 6, and it's cool to know that I can make videos about it and people watch them, so I appreciate you watching this. And if you haven't seen my other Grand Theft Auto 6 videos, I've got a couple right here for you to check out. Other than that, you have a great rest of your day, night, week, year, whatever. Just stay safe out there in this dangerous world. Peace.